Good morning. I have two interviews for you this week. One is about the skills that PR people will need in the future, and one is about that almost mystical goal of how to be authentic. Welcome back to Series 5.5 of the Public Relations Podcast. Series 5.5 is a collection of interviews that I just simply never had time to run during Series 5 of the show. There's some really good ones in here, mostly unedited as well. And the plan is to run them all over the next few weeks ahead of Series 6, which is going to have that totally new format that I've been talking about for the past couple of weeks. I'm still looking for guests, by the way, for Season 6, and it's going to be ongoing as well. So that's not just like please come and join me for the first couple of weeks. It's like over time for the whole of the season. I've been looking for booking particular weeks for your slot, and then we'll be going through the format. If you would like to have a look at what's going to be involved in the new season, which is all focused on the feedback you gave me from the last season, so hopefully it's exactly what you want, then have a look at the website. It is thepublicrelationspodcast.com, thepublicrelationspodcast.com, and then in the menu at the top, click on the guest link, and you can see the format, what's going to be involved, how to get in touch with me as well. So let's talk about this week. Well, we're going to start off with a short chat with Lucy Newcomb, and she's a director at Salt and Shein, which is an executive recruitment and talent advisor to the corporate affairs, communications, government relations, and investor relations space. So basically covering a whole gamut of PR-related roles. And I saw her at the recent Umbrella CommsCon conference on stage. And straight after she came off stage, I grabbed her and said, would she have a quick chat with me? And she very kindly agreed. We cover the merging of marketing and PR, the importance of data, and lots more, in fact. One word of warning, there is a distortion that comes in early on in the chat. I think it's caused by a mobile phone, and I was going to edit it out, but Lucy's making a great point about the use of data, so I've left it in. The distortion goes away after about 15 seconds, but just a warning, it's going to come up in a few moments. Then after playing Lucy, I'm going to play that chat, which I did with a podcaster who's one of probably the most authentic podcasters I know, actually. But let's start with Lucy. Here we go.
It is going to change. However, I think the fundamentals around managing risk and reputation won't change. I think the tools that we use and the approach that we take will change, and technology will drive a lot of that. But going back a step, I think regulation has impacted a lot of, the demand for good corporate affairs. The fact that these industries are a lot more regulated. Executives need more advice on managing risk and reputation. And I think technology will be a tool that will enable us to make quicker decisions that are not necessarily the gut, so to speak, which often corporate affairs people are very good with. But I think this data will provide an overlay for us to act in a lot more accurate way about making quicker and faster decisions about managing risk.
So what would you say are the core things that someone in PR today needs to do to get themselves ready for the future? I mean, even if not, we're predicting the future. We don't know exactly what's happening.
We are predicting. And
how would you approach that challenge of the way that things are going to change, you think?
So I think our superpower as comms people is to be creative and curious and to tell accurate stories, right? The skills that you will need to do that won't change. You're still going to have to be a great writer. The robots are not going to replace all of that. I mean, because at the end of the day, there are going to be things that AI won't necessarily be able to pump out in full accuracy. So I think certainly the skills that we'd be looking to broaden out are around understanding data and analytics, combined with understanding more about the geopolitical environment and overlaying that and being able to present factual information for boards, for leadership teams to make good decisions.
Do you think PR is going to just become blended into marketing? Because even here we've talked about the merging of paid and earned and all this kind of... I mean, do you think PR as a term has a future?
I do, but I do think they'll be a lot more integrated. They're already integrated in the last 2 years. And we want comms people who are not the enemy to marketing. We want them to be friends with marketing. Equally, we're now going to want them to be friends with risk and legal and with chief technology officers. So I think they'll be there's already CBA merged, like lots of big companies out there are merging the function. So yes, I do think it'll be under customer and it'll be marketing and comms working together. I don't think it'll replace PR. They are different functions, but they will have to work together in a lot more integrated fashion. I mean, I think where the difference is there's communications and there's public affairs, and so I guess on the spectrum you've got investor relations, you've got sustainability. You have public affairs, which I would say is government affairs, and stakeholder relations, then you've got comms, and then you've got marketing. And I think together they will work together.
Thinking about the challenge of AI, just a final question here, is that AI is going to pump out a lot of average level quality stuff. How will humans stay ahead of that, do you think? How do you think we can carry on being innovative when there's just so much stuff out there?
I don't think it will be average. I think it's going to be as good as what you put into it. I think these things are going to be bloody clever. And I think, so it doesn't, I don't think
so it still needs the human to put that in, yeah?
Yeah, it still needs the human to make sure that it's accurate. And our job as PR professionals is to fact check and to take data that is accurate to make decision making more effective.
And as you say, it's about what you put into it as well. I mean, we've all heard about prompters and chatbot whisperers and all this already.
I mean, a lot of people in the room are concerned, if you put in the same thing, it will pump out 10 different things based on your, what you've previously put in as an individual. Yeah. So I think as companies get to use these, they will find their own tone of voice. They will find their own narrative. They'll find their own nuances within the brand or leaders or whoever they're managing within the business. So I think it'll just make us do our job a lot faster from a if you're talking about the heavy load stuff. The writing takes up a lot of time of PR professionals at the moment, and people rely on us to do that because it's a craft. I think it's going to, absolutely, it can do that for us. But hey, wouldn't we all like to spend more time doing other things?
Yeah, the fun stuff. So that was Lucy Newcomb from Salt and Shein. It's very clear that data is going to be really important in the future. I think you know my thoughts on this already. I'm very much think that data is needed as the foundation of good PR these days and good marketing generally. 2 episodes ago also I was talking to Matt Holmes from Poem about the same thing, and he was raising the same issues as well about how data is making things more targeted and people that just rely on their gut are going to become a thing of the past, frankly. There was also the fact that marketing and PR are merging. PR as a term is losing its focus, but the skill set is still going to be very much needed. There's also the whole discussion about AI. Will it be average? Will it be great? What do you think? I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? So we got 2 interviews in this episode. The next one is about authenticity. And I'm going to be running up my thoughts, by the way, on both of these topics in next week's free newsletter, which you can also find at the website at thepublicrelationspodcast.com. Just click on the newsletter link there. And in fact, I just released the latest newsletter about the chat in the last episode with John Woodruff from that agency in Holland, which was a really good one too. Now, Dr. Rita Jablowski is a highly experienced dementia expert with multiple letters after her name. But rather than being the sort of quiet professor type, she's a podcaster and he's not afraid of dropping a few curse words. Despite her show being something that she does entirely herself, and she actually started it on a kitchen table when she bought a microphone one day and got all inspired, she has built a reputation as a hard-talking, blunt-speaking expert for her very niche but dedicated fan base. She pulls no punches because it's her. She is no different talking to her off mic as she is when I was chatting to her, as she is when she's in her podcast. And in PR-led marketing, as always, we're always looking for how to be authentic. And when I was chatting to her, I just thought, this is a really interesting topic for the podcast because it just shows how she approaches it and perhaps demonstrates some of the lessons that we can learn ourselves, such as the need to be authentic, literally, by being involved in the topic that we're actually doing and not just trying to fake messages or fake that an organization is who it's actually not. I'll warn you straight away that there are a few blunt words in here and blunt topics as well, but that really is the whole point. It's about authenticity with the target people that you're trying to connect with. Let's hear Rita.
I think it's a combination.
Yeah.
I'm a nurse. Even though I have all these letters after my name, the thing is, I can put on a uniform, walk into a room, and be a nurse. I'm not one of those academics who can't touch a person. So I do have a sense of humor, but I'm very careful about not going off the rails. And I also realize that I'm speaking to a specific segment of my audience. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. There's many different people out there talking about dementia and living with the behaviors. And I've had people say, well, the name of your podcast turned me off. Well, then you're not really a person I would connect with. And I think the mistake people make is trying to be there for everybody. I mean, even messiahs have their detractors. So no matter how you are, someone's not going to like it. So I stopped caring about what other people think as long as I'm giving a message. And, sometimes I worry about going too far. There's some topics like sexuality that need to be addressed.
Let's talk about it from a sort of a business authenticity point of view as well, because obviously we've got a lot of people listening to this who are in PR and in marketing in that way. And the thing that I love about you is that you've connected with people by being authentic. And I think when we talk about PR, a lot of it is about creating an image and pretending to be something that we're not always completely. So what I'm interested in is how do you think that authenticity has helped you compared to being what people would like you to be?
I can't be what people would like me to be. And I've struggled with that in my career because historically, people in nursing and in academia have always been very conservative. I was often chastised as I was going back for more education, as I was maturing in my profession, of being too street, too blue collar, too crass. My first job was at the Philadelphia Veterans Administration Hospital, and those vets were not worried about.
Yeah.
I mean, they were polite and everything, but these were military, and that's a whole culture unto itself. And while they were very respectful to the nurses and to the staff, amongst themselves, there was a certain amount of joking. I mean, I had to be authentic because it was too much work to be something else. I was me. And
you were actually the authenticity, very clearly from what you said there, allowed you to connect with the people you needed to work with, isn't it? Because if you'd gone in there as some highbrow professor, you'd have never succeeded.
Oh, I would have been screwed. I would have been dead in the water. And you have to be authentic. If you come across as some high and mighty, because I saw peers who were I think they were so insecure, they put on this persona of I'm the great and almighty nurse, and they were abandoned. People wouldn't help them.
But by doing that, by carrying on that approach into your podcast and the way you're doing your consultancy and stuff like that, do you think taking that approach has helped?
It's alienated me with some segments of a potential audience. But I think if I were to try to please everybody, I'd have a non-distinct, unhelpful, blasé, boring podcast. So there's a reason why there's many voices, because all of us connect with a certain segment of our audience. And I'd rather connect to 10 people out of 100 than nobody. Because that's something I think a lot of people may not understand in marketing. You may have a huge list of people, but only a small percentage are going to buy. So why have a list of 10,000 people when only 3 are going to buy from you? And I think from a PR and marketing perspective, that's where authenticity pays off.
Let's think about how you get into the authentic mindset, because we all have those kind of sides of us which try and stop us from saying things. So
it's called your frontal lobe, and I think mine goes offline a lot.
Well, you know about this stuff far more than I do. So if we okay, well let's ask you this way then. Let's try and get inside your head here. How do you think about being authentic when you can feel those parts of you trying to stop you from being authentic?
Yeah, you're right. I do have those little voices that'll say, "Oh, so and so hears you say this, they'll be offended." Well, too bad. There are some of my podcasts, the worst thing I say is the word bitch in the title, because there's no reason for a profanity-laced sentence. But there are times I'm dealing with a topic so sensitive that the F-bomb or something will add a little bit of humor or levity, and it'll balance out the severity of the content.
I was going to ask you about that academic qualification as well. Do you think that actually helps you, almost gives you permission to be more honest and more blunt? Because people go, if I turned up in your job and started pretending, to know a little bit about dementia and started swearing and things like that, they're going to laugh me out the room. But do you think having those qualifications after having so much knowledge about this allows you to be more authentic?
It does, because the biggest compliment I receive is, you don't act like a professor. Thank God. When I start acting like one, please shoot me. Because the stereotype is, the person in the tweed collar, or we used to joke among ourselves when I was younger in the profession, when I first started. Whenever you get a bunch of I was going to a conference and I said to a colleague, what do I wear? Because I've always had uniforms. I was afraid of showing up and looking nuts, being very unstylish or unfashionable. She says, Rita, these are nurse academics. Just follow the scent of the polyester. And she's right. You go to a nursing conference and everybody's wearing very comfortable clothes and flat shoes, except for the nurse executives. They're the pearl and pump people. And I joke around, and I'm speaking very broadly, because one of the best clinicians I know is also a chief nursing officer, and she's amazing, and she's so down to earth. But there are other people in leadership positions who are very, who definitely belong to the tightly wound set.
A final question really is about when you're approaching your podcast, and you're obviously thinking about a topic, but when you're thinking about what you're going to put in that, how do you think about how to deliver that in an authentic way? Do you just go, oh, what do I need to cover? Or do you think, you know what, I've got to get these points out? Is there almost an aggression? I mean, what's the mindset again to make sure that your content isn't just a bunch of facts, but is an authentic?
It's telling a story. I'm a storyteller.
Yeah. And
I think that's also a part of my authenticity. The best messages are stories.
Oh, absolutely.
So I give some facts. Sometimes I'll lead off with an anecdote. Sometimes I'll just say, this is the issue. But I always have a story in there that has, it's not just any story. It has a point. I ask myself, will this be helpful? Yeah. And if the answer is, if the anecdote, if the example isn't helpful, it gets scratched out. And I have taught stuff that I only knew from out of the book. And I hated that because I felt like I was making crap up, and I felt like the students knew it too. And when I was talking about stuff that I had seen, I had done, I felt like there was a different power in the speech that came through. So I think authenticity is also not just knowledge, but if you're doing what it is that you do, I think the authenticity comes through. You don't have to do anything. It just shows up.
So that's Rita Jablowski, and her podcast is called, I probably have to say this carefully because if Spotify is making a transcript of this as well, the podcast name is Make Dementia Your B******. You can work out from that what it's called. Make Dementia Your B******. And I'll be rounding up my thoughts, as I say, on both Lucy and Rita in the next newsletter, which will be coming out next week. You can find that by going to the publicrelationspodcast.com and clicking on the newsletter link. Let me know also if you want to be a guest on the podcast from season 6. Check out the links on the website as well. You'll see it at the top. It says guest. It explains all about the format, how we're going to do it. And like I say, just book your week now. Let's get you in. Let's get you booked. And I think it's going to be a really exciting new format. I hope you're going to enjoy it too. I've not decided who I'm going to run next week yet. I've still got, I think, 3 or 4 interviews left to go. And then there'll be a bit of a pause before I start season 6 of the podcast in late September, when I think it's going to kick off with something really new and quite exciting. So in the meantime, have an absolutely awesome week, whatever you are working on, whatever campaigns you're doing. Let me know how you're getting on as well. I'd love to hear from you as always. You can find me on LinkedIn, Richard Midson, Midson, Richard Midson, Midson. But in the meantime, have an awesome week.